to infinity and beyond.
This is me. This is how I win.
Were you rushing or were you dragging? Answer!
You're a wizard, Harry.
Say what again? Say what again? I dare you.
No, I am your father.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
And here we go.
Hello, everyone. Happy New Year. Welcome back inside the film room. I'm Zach Goins here with Johnny Sobchak. And today we are talking all about 2022. It may be the new year, but we are looking back. This episode is all about our favorite movies from last year, our favorite shows from last year. And it's going to be a fun one to dive into it. Johnny, how are you doing in this brand new year so far?
So far, so good, Zach. Good to be back.
2 days in, thriving.
Yeah, it's only 2 days out here, but so far it's good, I think, and I'm excited. I mean, it's strange because I feel like for a number of reasons this is a year that I've been looking forward to, but especially when it comes to movies, like there's been a lot of long gestating like films and TV shows and all sorts of things to look forward to. So we'll be talking about some of that later on, but we're mostly going to be focused on all the great stuff that we, of course, got to see in 2022 as well.
Yeah, don't get ahead of yourself here. You're going to ruin next week's episode if you keep talking like that. But like we said, talking top 10 movies of 2022 this year. Gonna not do an official ranking, but just discuss some of our favorite shows. Mm-hmm. And that's going to make up most of this episode. But first and foremost, thank you for being here. Make sure you subscribe to our newsletter, The Rewind, so that you can get everything delivered straight to your inbox. Never miss an episode or a post on the website. We've got a lot of stuff coming out on the site with some home release reviews, some year-end lists, some new release reviews. I know we're about to kick off 2023. Your boy is seeing Megan tomorrow night.
Oh,
so wow. we love a January horror film. We'll see what Blumhouse has cooked up, but a review should be coming up on the site for that soon. And I'll make sure to discuss it thoroughly with Johnny next week on our episode.
Of course.
But what's been going on? I know we had it last week off for the holidays, so I'm sure there was some holiday movie watching, some new releases, some cramming before we had to submit our NCFCA ballots. What's been going on? And I know you also, in addition to watching things, getting things, Johnny. I know you had some impressive hauls for your physical media, your movie-related gifts over the holidays.
Yes, it's been a really fun and enjoyable last couple of weeks, especially with the holidays. I was doing some catch up for voting and just end of the year, just trying to get as many 2022 titles up to speed as I could. Some of those were, of course, I mean, this wasn't really so much related to that because I was going to see it no matter what, but Avatar, The Way of Water, of course, released just recently, and then Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, one of the animated films that's been getting a lot of buzz as of late, of course. I also watched Fire of Love, the documentary from Neon. I don't know if you've seen that or not. I don't think you have, but
I have not.
I quite like that. And then I also finally caught up to you. You saw this back in October. I saw Glass Onion, the Knives Out sequel, and because it finally released on Netflix. And got the opportunity to check that out. Did it kind of while I was doing some gift wrapping, kind of had it going on, and my girlfriend watched it with me because she's a big murder mystery fan, even more than I am.
Right.
And she liked it more than I did, for sure. That wasn't one that I didn't anticipate liking it too much. And I would say it's like very close to being on par with the first one, which I also wasn't a huge fan of. So for me, that was the one out of everything that was just kind of like, but Puss in Boots, I was very pleasantly surprised by. I liked Fire of Love, which you can find on Disney Plus as well for anyone listening that wants to check that out, because it's a Nat Geo production. And then Avatar, of course, I'm sure we will be discussing that a little bit later. And then also with the holidays, I did want to knock off some movies that I always try to check out around this time of year. Some of my favorites, like Batman. I'm a big fan of the movies that aren't necessarily like full blown.
The movies that take place at Christmas but are not Christmas movies.
Exactly. Yeah. So like Batman Returns is a classic. I got the 4K for that, which is one of the best looking, I think, especially for superhero movies. And then Eyes Wide Shut. That's a yearly staple for me. One of my favorite Kubrick films and like Tom Cruise movies. Klaus, which I feel like it's kind of like that for me. I know you're not as high on that as I am, but that for me is like an instant new holiday classic that came out in 2019. If you haven't seen that on Netflix yet, mark that for next year. And then other ones like Elf and Carol. That's another one that I really, really love. That's just kind of like this, romantic drama set around the holidays. And so that's a lot of fun for me, is just getting to check those out and like I have that tradition, I guess, just every year getting to check those out and showing them to people that haven't seen them before and that kind of thing, my family and whatnot.
Right. Well, we did watch Elf, so that's a staple. I never really like sat down and watched a ton of Christmas movies this year just because I was busy with a lot of stuff. But it was a lot of like just on cable TV, like the 25 Days of Christmas or whatever. So like I saw like probably like a combined 3/4 of Home Alone across different viewings. I saw like Home Alone 2, those are two of my favorites. But going from Elf to something else, I watched this is so disappointing, Johnny. Earlier, I know we mentioned this like in November because that's when it released, but the movie Spirited on Apple, Ryan Reynolds, Will Ferrell musical holiday comedy. I had a screener for it, thought about watching it, but then I had strict instructions from Rebecca's mother that no one is allowed to watch it. We're saving it to watch on Christmas Eve as a family. So that's what we did, saved it, watched it. And there was probably about like 20 minutes into it where everybody kind of looked around at each other and was like, are we really doing this? Are we pushing through? Because it was like everybody had been like, I hadn't been like I was looking forward to the experience of it. And I was like, this isn't going to be a great movie, but like maybe it'll have some like good warm and fuzzies, some funny moments. Like Will Ferrell for me is hit or miss. Like I either like think he's hilarious in some movies or like it's far too much. And then Ryan Reynolds, like we've discussed plenty of times, like ever since Deadpool, he's just done the same thing. So anyway, it was not good in the slightest, I don't think, unfortunately. The music was rough. Like they had a bunch of musical numbers that weren't particularly good. It honestly wasn't like super funny, which was a bummer. I was like, at least maybe we'll get some one-liners out of this. But the shticks, both of the actors were still just doing their same old shtick. Very predictable. We also had Octavia Spencer in there who could not sing to save her life, so that was very sad. I was like, why are you making this poor woman do this? But big bummer. Everybody but it was like a mutual bonding experience with the family of like, at the end we're all like, oh please don't make us watch that again. Like misery loves company, so we were able to at least sympathize with each other for that. So that was a bummer. That was my only new release that I watched since then, because like I had said, I believe we talked about it, you mentioned Puss in Boots and like Avatar. Obviously we had our Avatar episode. I had seen some of those like prior to our last episode. But Spirited was the only new release that I finished the year with, and it was movie number 67 on the year for me, and it came in at 64 on my ranking. So I was ending the year on a big low, unfortunately. But on the flip side, some solid TV. I finished Mythic Quest season 3. That's redeeming Apple, whereas Spirited was damning them. But Mythic Quest, another solid season for them. Very great workplace comedy in the video game industry, really talented cast. I like the way we already know there's going to be a season 4, so it did a good setup of like the way that they're leading these characters. This was a big season of change, so I'm excited to see what it sets up for in season 4. And then on the flip side, on Netflix, I literally just started this last night because it just came out yesterday, January 1st, Netflix kicking off the year with like an experiment. And I'm not really a huge Netflix guy anymore. I mean, obviously, I'll still ride or die for Stranger Things, as we'll talk about
Yeah.
later. There are like a handful of shows, Outer Banks, the both of those being like silly shows, but they're like enjoyable entertainment, but not like I don't go to Netflix for like top quality shows by any means.
Yeah.
But the new experiment for them, it's called Kaleidoscope. Have you heard of it?
Yeah, I'm interested in watching that. It sounds really cool.
Yeah, I'm so we started it last night. So the gimmick here, we'll see if it's just a gimmick or if it actually works, but it's like 8 episodes, I believe, and they're each named after a color. And the whole thing is like you can watch the episodes in any order that you want. I believe each like user is like when you go to it, I believe each user has like a different order that the episodes are in for them, but you can also just like jump around however you want.
Yeah.
The only rule is that you end with the episode called White because that's the finale. But it's like a heist. Like I'm not super far into it. It's like a heist, not movie, heist show.
Uh-huh.
Where this like group of criminals is getting together to pull off this big heist. And so like each episode that you watch, like it's a lot of flashbacks, and so you're getting to know the characters in different orders and things are happening, unfolding in a different way. And so like each episode informs the other. So I've only seen the one so far. I don't know how it's going to play out, but it's intriguing. And I've seen a lot of articles already of like, this is the best order to watch Kaleidoscope in, or like this is the order that I wish I had watched it in.
Yeah.
So I started with green. I don't know if anybody out there has watched otherwise, but I did not look anything up. I just kind of picked the first one that came up. So we'll see how it plays out. If I'm doing it wrong, who knows? But I think this is much more. I don't know how much they've done since then, but I remember when Black Mirror did Bandersnatch, which was like the choose where you had to like decide how things work. Like I wasn't a huge fan of that because I'm watching the show. I don't want to be clicking like yes or no buttons or like choosing scenarios, but this is like, I think this is a cool interactive twist where you don't, it's a passive interactivity rather than like actively doing stuff while you're watching. So we'll see. I'll report back after I get through these colors and see how it plays out. But I think it's at least like, obviously like TV has been around for so long. Like at least somebody's like, how can we change this? In the words of Miles Braun from Glass Onion, Netflix is a disruptor right now.
Well, it's interesting because one thing that comes to my mind that I'm curious about is Netflix is well known and almost maybe notorious for as soon as the show or episode ends, it goes to loading up the next one. Does it not happen with this show? How does that work?
I didn't even notice that last night because we were literally like just watching one. There was no thoughts of watching the next one.
Yeah.
I was like before bed, so I'll have to dig into that and figure it out. But I was curious. I don't know if like when I go back, is it going to be shuffled into a different order or is it like once it's like that's my order, so that's how I'm going? I don't know. We'll see.
I also think it's interesting that I don't know. I haven't really seen anyone else make this comparison. I'm sure it's been made though. It's a heist story and there's all these people and the episodes are named after these different colors and it's out of order and everything. It sounds like Reservoir Dogs the show in a way, because that's
true.
That is a heist movie where it's the characters are all named
color based
and then it's all the narrative is like out of order and it's not as crazy as Pulp Fiction, but there's a lot of flashbacks and jumping around and different perspectives and that sort of thing. So I'm sure I would be curious if the creators have mentioned anything about having inspiration from that. But I think for a streaming idea, I think that's a really cool concept. And I'm again curious to see how that plays for people. And I don't know if I will make that a priority to watch because I'm still getting caught up on some other things from last year. But if you think it's good and recommend it, I'll probably check it out.
Yeah, I'm curious now. I'm looking at the Rotten Tomatoes and it's got a 20% critic score.
Whoa! Holy moly!
75% audience score, 20% critic score, but it's only got 5 reviews so far.
Okay.
So we could see some change there, but I like one of the things that made me like, I feel like I would not necessarily like choose to watch this, but It's
Yeah.
got Giancarlo Esposito in it who's like fantastic in Breaking
Yeah.
Bad, and Moff Gideon and Mandalorian. So it's like that for me gave it some sort of like credibility rather than just like, here's a C-list cast that we're just trying this out with.
Yeah.
Jai Courtney is in there as well.
Okay.
This says Ridley Scott is an executive producer on it. I don't know how involved he may or may not be, but we'll
Interesting.
see. I'll report back. We'll have to keep tabs on Kaleidoscope. But that's pretty much it for me as far as what I've been watching. Shall we get into what we've been watching all year long? Some favorite shows of 2022?
Let's get it.
All right. So like we said, no, top 10, top 5, whatever. We can just kind of chat about some of our favorites. I'm sure there's probably going to be some overlap, but for me personally, I'm if you can't tell by listening so far, like I'm someone who keeps tabs on everything. There's not really like a letterboxed app for TV, so I just like rely on my notes app, and I literally like track everything religiously. So I watched 44 seasons of television, including like stuff from previous years. But as far as 2022 goes, 32 new shows. Of my top 15, 8 were HBO Max, and 4 were Apple TV Plus. So those two streamers dominate, like always. I feel like it's definitely like always for HBO. Apple more recently, obviously, but has been come in hot and stayed hot. So a lot to love from those two. But first up, my let's talk about, I know it's probably going to be on your list too, but House of the Dragon. We recapped it every week throughout the season. Loved this. What a fantastic return to Westeros. So good to see this world again and to see it in a new twisted way that twisted in both senses of the word. Like it was a twist on what we had, but it's also very twisted in what's going down here. But elevated itself from the later seasons of Game of Thrones, returned to like the peak of what we've come to expect from this world, from this franchise, and was really, really impressed and blown away by this show. Absolutely can't wait for season 2. Johnny, I'm hoping that this is in your favorites as well.
Yeah, this would definitely be top. I mean, this would probably be my number 2, maybe, or very much up there. It just is exactly what they needed at HBO after how Game of Thrones ended, which was a unsatisfying, I think, ending for most people. And so there was a lot of doubt and skepticism around this show. But I mean, right off the bat, I think from the first episode, they made a very good impression and set up a great story and great characters. And they were really consistent and solid all the way through all 10 episodes, and a great finale that also, I think, set up a lot of potential and I think optimism for season 2, and then also subsequent seasons. I think we're going to get at least 3, probably 4 seasons of the show over the next maybe 4 or 5 years. So I'm excited. I am bummed that we do have quite a layoff between now and season 2, but
we need him to get on this James Cameron shit and film it back to back.
Yeah, I'm sure going for season 3 they're going to be pretty quick about it. But yeah, I can see why they were a little hesitant or maybe unsure, because there was so much doubt, and I'm just glad that is been pretty much erased, because I think most people as fans of TV or fantasy fans or fans of this world wanted more of it. And I think that this is like a really good follow-up and kind of prequel story and series to kind of base that on. So I'm all for it, and absolutely definitely one of the highlights. And I think at least online and social media discussion and whatnot and memes, and it was just a great return to form for what we got with that experience in the later seasons of Game of Thrones.
It was the zeitgeist of just like being the center of attention.
Yeah. And so that's fun. That's like half the experience right there, at least for us terminally online folks.
Right.
So yeah, definitely. I think as far as those go for shows this year, I think that was the number 1 in that respect, at least.
And I know I've talked about it. I know you posted it. The book, Fire and Blood, I've gotten it. I've read probably about like 75 pages so far. So definitely planning on like digging into that to tide me over the next coming months until we get some sort of season 2 announcement or anything. Are you, I know previously you had said you weren't necessarily going to read it, but then you got a freaking signed copy of it, right? So now it's like you have to, or is it going to
Oh
be a
no.
wait and see?
That signed copy is going to be in pristine condition for all intents and purposes going forward. So I'm not going to read that copy. And honestly, because like when I first opened my gift and saw that it was a copy of the book, I was like, oh, that's so cool. Like I was really excited. But then I was also thinking like, do I want to spoil like what's going to happen? Because I'm pretty well like in the dark. I know that there's different things online people have seen from Game of Thrones and whatnot, but I was like, oh, I don't know. And then when I opened it, of course, and saw that it was a signed copy, I was like, oh, okay, I'm definitely not reading this.
No crinkled pages,
No
nothing.
crinkled pages. It's gonna be in good shape. But no, I am gonna refrain from reading because I do like not knowing. And I know I obviously have a general idea of certain things that may happen and with certain characters, but I'm kind of happy with where I am in that. And if I want to read it later on, maybe I will.
Maybe you can at least, I don't know, in what I've read so far, like I said, it's literally like just a sliver of this massive book.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's not even close to the events of the show yet. It's all like
Yeah.
all I've read is like about Aegon the Conqueror, like the first of the Targaryens to come.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's like I feel like there's at least some that you could read of being like
Yeah.
unaffected by House of the Dragon timeline, at least, if
Yeah.
that's what you're interested in. But I know people online are begging for Henry Cavill to
An
play Aegon
Aegon
the
show.
Targaryen in that show. So it may eventually spoil
Who
something, but maybe
knows?
not
Yeah.
directly.
Yeah, no, I agree that there's a whole bunch of different directions they can go. So I think that's another exciting part of that. But Zach, I would say the best season of TV I watched all year, and one of the best seasons of TV that I've ever seen would be Severance, season one.
Bang.
This came out earlier in the year. It was around springtime, I think. And I think still, I haven't rewatched it yet. I've just done the one viewing, but from the first episode to the finale, everything in between, this was a absolute huge home run and very, very impressive like introductory season for this show, which is an Apple TV Plus exclusive. And I think that a lot of people like more people have come on to that service in recent, last year or two. Of course, with Ted Lasso being like the marquee kind of
It's been a lot of like, oh, what do I watch after Ted Lasso? And now
yeah,
they have built up a very large library of like, oh wow, yeah, I'm definitely
yeah,
sticking around for this.
exactly. And I think this is one that I just really want to reiterate and continue to sing its praises because I don't think I've seen nearly enough people talking about it.
Yeah, I was late to Severance as well, even being like the Apple TV Plus spokesman that I am. No, I was a bit late to it, so it had like just ended, I believe, when I started it. Which made it nice that I was able to just like breeze right through it. But no, I'm with you. As far as just like a standalone season of television to kick off a show, it was absolutely fantastic. I do want to do a rewatch at some point. I know we're we don't have like specific news yet on season 2, I don't believe, but I know there's been like casting announcements, expanding cast, Gwendolyn Christie getting in there to segue from Thrones into Severance. But no, like this, it was a bit of a slow burn the first couple episodes, as you're like trying to figure out what exactly is going on. And then like once everything kind of clicks halfway through, it's just like a mad sprint to the end with one of the best cliffhanger endings that I can remember from TV recently.
Oh man. Yeah.
Like literally it's one of those endings where it's like, wait, are you kidding me? That's the end. Now I have to wait an undisclosed amount of time to find out what's next. So it'll be interesting to see like whether we pick up immediately following what that twist ending is, or if it's going to be like a time jump or any sort of change there. But I'm with you. I can't sing enough praises for Severance, and I'm thrilled for season 2.
Yeah, I'm glad that they're already well into production on that, it sounds like, and that they've added some really exciting cast members as well, new cast members, and of course a lot of the main folks returning. So yeah, I'm all in on this one, and anyone that I know that's watched it has also loved it pretty much just as much as I have, if not more. So definitely check that out if you have not. Zach, as you said, you are the resident Apple TV Plus shill.
That I am,
and I use that in a complimentary sense. But that's so Severance would not be the only thing this year that you loved on that service. I mean, that's really the main thing I've seen, but I do have something else I'll talk about. But what is something else that you have from over there at Apple?
This is I know I said I wasn't going to do like an official ranking, but I kind of just picked my top 5 shows because I have my own personal ranking, but these are my top 5 shows. So maybe it is a ranking, but my number 3 from this year was Blackbird, which was a true crime dramatization starring Taron Egerton and Paul Walter Hauser. I know we talked about it previously on the podcast. Did you end up watching it or not, Johnny?
I did not. I have yet to watch it. It's on my list, but
as it should be. But you were talking about Reagan being like the murder mystery fan. For me, I'm like all up in some true crime. I love the Mindhunter, Zodiac, all of like those sorts of movies or shows. But this very much felt like it could be in that Mindhunter universe. We've got Taron Egerton's playing like a criminal who was arrested for like I believe he's like a drug dealer, and he was arrested and sentenced to a big sentence in prison, but then was basically given like an option of like, hey, if you can go befriend this serial killer in this crazy nuts prison like that nobody survives in and get a confession out of him, then we'll reduce your sentence. So Paul Walter Hauser's the serial killer, giving an absolutely bone-chilling, creepy performance as this just like man-child. Basically, it gives, if for anyone who's watched Mindhunter, it gives like Ed Kemper vibes, kind of. But what a show! It's only 6 episodes, so it's like a quick little mini series, limited series. But just a fantastic drama, very tense, a lot of really, really solid acting there. I'm going to be all on board on the campaigns for both Paul Walter Hauser and Taron Egerton when it comes to Emmy season. But love Blackbird, could not be more excited about this show and its potential come award season.
Yeah, there's no reason for me not to honestly have checked it out by now. I mean, there's been a lot to catch up on, but it's definitely one of my top priorities. Along with Ted Lasso, I will watch the first 2 seasons before.
Man, I don't know. I'm not buying that one.
I promise you. But for Apple, since we're talking about our top 5s, we're talking about Apple. This would definitely be one of my top 4 or 5 shows for the year. And this is also, I think, one of the, again, more overlooked or underrated shows that they have, and that's For All Mankind, which I know I told you.
Right. This is, now the tables are turned. I have not watched this yet.
Have some shame. But it's a great alternate history, almost like a quasi sci-fi television show where imagine what would have happened if the Soviets had gotten to the moon before the Americans, and what if the space race had just continued and exploded after that as a result. And that's not spoiling anything that comes in the first 2 minutes of the show, but it's a really, really fun premise. And this is the 3rd season. Me and Reagan, my girlfriend, flew through all 3 seasons basically in the span of maybe just under a month. And the whole cast is exceptional. One of my favorite ensembles on TV. Joel Kinnaman is really the main lead, and he's someone who he's shown up here and there. He's been in the Suicide Squad films for better and worse. But he's a really great performer, and I think this is basically his like magnum opus. Like he's just across all the episodes that he's in is a really strong character, and has like great supporting characters and other actors, and the effects are really impressive for the most part. Like I think the Apple really like puts in like the money, and it shows up in this show. But it's also like really just a great, like I've mentioned, the acting, the performances, like at its core, it's like a melodrama. Like it's almost like a sci-fi, like space opera, almost kind of like soap opera, space opera. Like it's a really fun, just juicy, dramatic kind of, with all these different characters and relationships, parents and their kids, people in marriages. It's just a lot of like interesting dynamics. And through 3 seasons so far, the other thing that I won't spoil, but just kind of allude to, is that the setting of the show and how they have kind of evolved it over the 3 seasons is really interesting, and it's something that I've not really ever seen in a show before. Which again, I don't want to like elaborate too much, but it's really impressive what they've managed to do and like maintain and even improve, I think, across like the 3 seasons so far. And I think they either are in production or maybe have already finished production on season 4. So there's at least one more season coming, and so I highly recommend getting caught up on that. Even if you're not a big sci-fi or like space like person or anything like that, I think just the drama alone will get you interested. But there's also a lot of great tension and kind of spectacle that comes out of the space sequences. So definitely one of my favorite shows that I came onto this year.
Apple has gone hard with the sci-fi world.
Yeah,
Between
Severance.
this and Foundation and Severance and
Foundation.
I know I still haven't ever watched it. I know did you watch the whole thing or did you just start it?
I tried. I did not finish.
I know we had such high hopes for that, but maybe
Such a
I'll
bummer.
get around tomorrow or to it. But I know the show Invasion was also sci-fi. I don't believe that got very good reviews, unfortunately.
They have a show in the
But
pipeline based on a book called Dark Matter. Have you heard of that?
no, I don't think
Yeah,
so.
you would probably like the book. I just got it for my brother for Christmas. It was on his list. And one of the reasons I thought it would be a good one to get is they're doing an Apple TV show. It has a pretty solid cast. Joel Edgerton is supposed to be the lead. But that's just another, like, it sounds like a pretty, like, very like sci-fi, like not light sci-fi, like hard sci-fi
Mhm.
kind of story. So I think that's, again, yeah, they are definitely, I think, like kind of scooping up some really interesting properties, and that's definitely something to keep an eye on. I think, but as a sci-fi fan myself, like a big
Right.
sci-fi, yeah, I think they are definitely in the lead in a lot of respects with that.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, with For All Mankind, it's nice even with Foundation. Like you don't have to watch it, or even like even if you do watch it, enjoy it, but you can at least respect like the scale that they're doing it on and the quality of
Yeah,
like effects and set design, production design, like all of these things. So it's like it's nice that all of these properties are at least in the hands of a streamer that's going to put in the money and the effort to make this what like deserving of
yeah.
the quality. So that's good to see that Apple's really going all in on that. My speaking of putting the money behind things, my number 4 show for the year, Stranger Things season 4. Like I said earlier, I'll ride or die for some Stranger Things. I still really enjoyed this season. It definitely, I'd have to do like a full rewatch to fully rank them all out, but I would say this is probably on the lower end of my favorites. Like if of the 4 seasons, but I still thought it was really good, really compelling. I feel like at this point it's just like because we are so attached to this show, to these characters, that gives it a whole lot of like benefit of the doubt as well.
Yeah.
But for me, I know a big thing this season was like splitting it into 2 parts, making the episodes extra long. As someone who is such a big fan and eats this up, like I was perfectly fine with that. I didn't have any issues with it. So we've got 1 season left. Season 5 is going to bring it home, and then who knows? I'm sure there's going to unlock all sorts of spinoffs and stuff within this world. I believe it's already been talked about.
Yeah.
But I'm still excited about this show. Still pumped up to see how it ends and to spend some more time with these characters. So Stranger Things 4 came in at number 4 on my list. Johnny, you did not get around to it yet, did you?
I'm
You
not.
didn't get around to season 3, right?
Yeah, no, I'm much behind on that show, but I do plan on getting caught up with that, and before season 5, like before the grand finale, I do want to get fully up to speed because I did enjoy the first 2 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
So that'd be definitely on my list.
Well, I have at least one more on my list that I want to talk about. I'm sure this is one. If I had to guess, I would say it's kind of an overlap between us.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely, no question. Top 5 for me as well. So maybe this will be a good spot to round off on.
The Rehearsal. What a show! What a concept! What an absurd couple weeks of television. Thanks to Nathan Fielder. Never seen anything like it. Never been so uncomfortable watching a show before. But man, was it brilliant. The comedy, the uniqueness of it. I was able to get a solid Halloween costume out of it. Man, it's more of an experience than it is a show.
Yeah.
I feel like
It's hard to
it's
compare
just,
it to anything.
other than Nathan For You, but even that doesn't do it justice just because of how twisted this thing ends up getting.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, the hardest I've laughed watching a show this year, probably. The most I've been like just shocked and like in awe of watching like a show in a way that's different from like being in awe watching, Vagar and House of the Dragon or something like that. It's just a very specific type of absurdist comedy, surreal, like kind of situation, not
Mhm.
knowing what's what. And so yeah, there's just so singular, and the wild thing about this is though is that we are getting a season two. Like they have greenlit already at HBO. I'm all for it. I think that if he has something and he thinks he can do it, then why not? Because I think even if the season two maybe just isn't up to par, like not as good, I think the first season still stands on its own as like an amazing like achievement.
Right.
But I think that there's still, I mean, who knows with Nathan Fielder how his mind works? I'm sure he'll come up with something for season two. And yeah, if you haven't, it wasn't a show that, I mean, there was some great stuff on Twitter that people were posting and making memes of and that sort of thing. But again, it was one that I felt was a little under the radar compared to some of the bigger.
It's very niche, I feel like.
It is niche. So give it a shot if you haven't already. It's on it right there on HBO Max. Certainly one of the biggest highlights of the year. In addition to that, I do want to do kind of maybe honorable mentions in a way, just kind of shout out some of my like maybe top 10 shows that we're not going to dive
Let's
into.
hear it.
Barry on HBO as well.
Mm.
Season 3 was amazing, just as the first couple were. Season 4 is in production or is going to be coming out maybe this year, as early as this year. Maybe it'll be next year, but definitely get caught up before that. Atlanta rounded out its series with its last 2 seasons. Season 3 and season 4 came out on FX, and it's on Hulu if you want to stream that and get caught up. The full series is on there. It's one of the best shows ever, in my opinion, especially from a comedic and like absurdist point of view. And then also on HBO, you have White Lotus season 2, and I also binged season 1, which I loved. I love them both about equally, I would say. And then also Peacemaker, maybe the comic book or superhero show of the year, I would say, maybe. The Boys season 3, I would also have in that conversation on Amazon, but on an emotional level, I would say Peacemaker has the edge for me when it comes to like the superhero show of the year. But both, I think Peacemaker and The Boys in their own ways and in a lot of similar ways stood out, I think, over like the MCU Disney Plus shows and
Right.
other stuff you'd find on like the CW and that sort of thing. So yeah, I'd say, oh, and also speaking of comic book shows and HBO, Harley Quinn as well. Invincible was an excellent animated comic show we got last year from Prime. Not in last year, I mean 2021. And then this year, with that not around, Harley Quinn came back and returned, and I think that was again just as strong as the first couple of seasons. And season 4 should be out this year, so keep an eye out for that as well.
Yeah, well, since you did that, and a lot of those are actually on my list as well. I'll give my honorable mentions, aka 6 through 10, for my list, which is an HBO sweep. Hacks at 6, Sex Lives of College Girls season 2 at 7, Peacemaker at 8. So I was very high on that as well. And I'm still working through my first watch of The Boys. I'm midway through season 2, so I was not able to weigh in on season 3. Righteous Gemstones season 2 at number 9, and Barry season 3 at number 10. So again, HBO, they just never a down year. They just simply reload every single year. Every Sunday when one show ends, the next Sunday the next banger is starting. So, and that's with, I didn't even watch White Lotus.
To The Last of Us as well.
Yeah, that's going to be a huge one to kick off this year. I know you're thrilled about it. I have not played the games, but I'm absolutely excited about it, just because of what it is, but also because of how hype you, Jake, everybody else has been. So very excited for that to kick things off this year. But great year of television. I know we've talked about it a bit before, but like I really split a much more evenly this year between watching TV and movies, and I'm really enjoying that because, like I've said, Rebecca is a much more TV focused person, so it's been nice to open my eyes a bit more there. But shall we switch over to the top 10 movies of 2022, Johnny?
Let's do it.
So we're going to count down, unlike our kind of casual discussion of TV shows. This is going to be a very official, very intense countdown. Alternating from 10 down to 1, we will go back and forth. If there's overlap, like we did with shows, if we have something that's 10 on my list, but 2 on Johnny's list, we can talk about it at the same time, just for the sake of not ping-ponging back and forth too much. So with that being said, Johnny, why don't you kick us off with your number 10 here?
Oh man, this is tough. And obviously, I would say this is a loose 10, except for like the top maybe 2 or 3. But I would come in here at number 10 and say Park Chan-wook's decision to leave would be my number 10. I love The Handmaiden. That's really the only other film of his that I've seen. But this movie, he finally came back and dropped another banger. It's a very strange, almost like psycho-sexual, like erotic kind of not as erotic as like The Handmaiden or even like some of his other movies, like Stoker, but it's definitely like more of a detective like mystery that has like relational things happening, which is a lot of fun because it's, again, I mentioned earlier I was talking about kind of like melodrama. There's kind of like some of that to this, but it's just a very, very, very well crafted, like from the editing, some of the most like when I say exciting editing, it's like watching a shot that transitions and like does like a fade, and like it just the way it's all like composition and everything is just like so well done. And then that also like leans into the cinematography, but then also the lead performances in this, all the technical things are pretty much a 10 out of 10. But Park Hae-il and Tang Wei, they're like 2 of the best performances of the year. I voted for both of them in the lead categories this year for NC Film Critics Association. And then Park himself, like as the director, I thought was just, again, he pulls it all together and just does something very, it's in the vein of like a Hitchcock, especially Vertigo, which is one of my favorite movies, and I think the best Hitchcock film. So yeah, I think that this is just something that it's been under the radar. Obviously it's on Mubi is the distributor for this. So if you have that service, like check it out. But there is also going to be a physical release, I believe, coming soon, like a Blu-ray. And if you can catch it really anywhere, it's worthwhile checking out. Zach, I don't remember if you were able to actually see that. I don't think you got around to it, but
I did not. I have probably about 4 movies, at least 2 of which, including this, are going to be in your top 10 that are like on my, they were hopeful crams at the end of the year, but didn't get to it. So definitely on my like start of 2023 list. So this is one of them. I was not able to check it out yet, but I know you love it. Jake loves it. I've heard great things about it, and I'm excited to check it out eventually.
As you should.
Well, very different change of film styles for my number 10 here. For me, this was the second movie I saw this year, I believe, way back in January. Scream 5, also known as Scream. I saw it. I loved it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars to kick off the year, and it held steady throughout the year. I was a big fan. I've seen Scream 1, Scream 2, and Scream 5. I have not gotten to 3 or 4 yet, but I've been a big fan of all of the movies in this franchise that I've seen. I love the meta self-referential aspect of it all. Obviously the first one was iconic for its play on the horror genre. Then the second one had its play on like sequels. And then this most recent one coming years later is about reboots, requels, sequel, like legacy sequels, whatever you want to call it. And in a year in which we're getting, a Top Gun Maverick, something like that is a legacy sequel, done perfectly, but it's very applicable in this time where like everything, all this old IP is still getting use out of it. And you would like it. Did you ever end up seeing this or not? Because the one line taking a shot at Ryan Johnson, I feel like that gives it value to you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, I did see it in theaters. I did like it. I think it's a good movie. And I thought like all the meta commentary and that sort of thing was it's a fun, interesting like way to approach like and kind of do something new with Scream after so many movies. So I definitely respected that, and I'll check out Scream 6 when it comes out. And
it's cool to see. I know like we've obviously seen Jenna Ortega in a ton of stuff. I never watched Wednesday, but we've seen her in Scream and Wednesday and X, like the she's becoming this modern day horror icon, scream
Yeah.
queen, whatever you want to call it. And that looks to be just exponentially growing it with Scream 6 as well. We just got the teaser for that. Which I will say interesting. It's always been Scream is always it's always what I can't think of it right now. What's the town in Scream?
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah, I'm
It's in,
completely blanking on it as well.
it's always in that town. I can't remember it at this point, but
Well, now it's
Scream
not.
6 is in New York. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what the twist is there as far as what kind of
Woodsboro.
Woodsboro, yes. The Woodsboro murders by Gail Weathers. But we'll see what the location change does, if there's some sort of like meta commentary on that. I feel like it has to be addressed in some way rather than just brushing over it. But we'll see. Really like this one. High expectations, and I believe the second one, not the second one, the sixth one comes out in like March. It's not too far away.
Yeah, I believe it's March as well. It's it's gonna
Yeah,
be one of
March
the
10th.
earlier big films of the year, I would say.
So that's my number 10. Johnny, back to you for 9.
Oh man, again, loose order here. I would say my number 9, and this was more solidified, I think, after I rewatched it for the first time. I guess out in theaters for the second time. Damien Chazelle's Babylon, which is this big 80 or 90 million dollar super rated R, super irreverent, but also kind of reverent film about old Hollywood, like before sound, or like the introduction of sound, almost riffing on Singing in the Rain for anyone that's seen that, which is, I mean, amazing movie that everyone should watch at least once. But basically, and it's this huge epic. Zach, I know you've seen it. I know you liked it. You didn't like it as much as I did, but I think it's there's nothing else like it that came out this year. And Chazelle, again, is such a well-oiled machine as a director. I think that it has some of the most impressive and inspired like editing of the year. The score by Justin Hurwitz is phenomenal. I'd put it right up there with the Batman as one of the top 2 or 3 scores of the year. And also Linus Sandgren's cinematography, again, just working across different modes and kind of forms and styles, black and white and whatnot, is just super satisfying. And as a big movie like fan, I think it just does a lot of things that hit me in the right spot, I guess I would say. And the cast also phenomenal. Margot Robbie, I think one of her more impressive and fun performances. Diego Calva, really impressive first Hollywood role from what I'm aware of, and he hasn't had many film roles to this point. In Mexico, I think, is where he's kind of originated. And then, of course, the whole ensemble. I mean, there's a lot of other performances and impressive parts in there. Gene Smart and others. And also, really, the main thing for me, I think it sticks, is that there's just so many like sequences, especially extended sequences, like where they are shooting their these film projects simultaneously, and we're kind of cutting back and forth and seeing the different issues and successes and things that happen on film sets, and also like trying to introduce sound into film back in like the 20s and 30s, like how that affected folks that were in the like movie business. And then also like the grand finale, which people have like spoken about to no end, I feel like, at least on film Twitter, where you're probably gonna like it or hate it. But I think that it really works for me, and just again the kind of overall, especially this movie coming out the end of the year, and just kind of almost like looking back on everything, and just looking back on movies in general and everything I've seen this year from past decades and years. I think it's not perfect by any means, and I hate when people say that, and I hate that I just said it actually, but I think it's just a movie that not everyone's gonna love, and I understand why you may not like it. But for me, I thought it was just really great and really just its own thing. And also Damien Chazelle, if you can get a blank check from Paramount to burn $100 million, go right ahead. I mean, why not? Because you're not really getting many, if any, movies like this anymore. So I'm all for it, and I think it stands out as in that regard at the very least.
Yeah, didn't make my top 10, but I enjoyed it. And you said love it or hate it, but I was kind of in that middle ground, one of the rare few, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, definitely respect and appreciate the fact that we are getting these big, massive risks being taken, because we don't, that's the worst thing, is for just everything to conform to, you know, a blueprint of this is how we make movies, rather than stuff that goes out there and takes shots, takes chances. So whether you loved it or hate it, appreciate it for that fact alone. My number 9 was also similar but different, I would say. Like in the fact that it is like this eclectic, bombastic movie. But mine is Elvis. Baz Luhrmann's Elvis. You know, it in the same sense of Babylon, it's got a lot of like all over the place stylistic flair. But a bit more straightforward, I guess. But Austin Butler, absolutely fantastic as Elvis. Definitely, he received my vote for Best Actor for NCFCA awards. But really enjoyed this movie. Saw it in theaters, then watched it again at home just this past month to kind of cement it as being as good as I thought it was. In all of the glitz and glamour of it all, I feel like what's really stuck with me is whether, like, I don't know. You obviously have to like dig more into his background to learn like what was embellished, what's true, what's not, what did they leave out. But as far as like what the story that this movie tells, I thought it was a deeply affecting, heartbreaking tragedy that is disguised as, you know, this like fun, flashy, musical number filled movie. You know, that final, not final, but like towards the end scene of Elvis and Priscilla at the airport and having their exchange in the car, like that. I remember leaving the theater and like thinking about that for days afterwards, and having the same effect when I just watched it a couple of weeks ago, that like how profoundly sad this is. So beyond, it's still a ton of fun watching this movie. They do a lot of cool stuff, a lot of exciting elements, but at the core, it's just like heartbreaking to watch. So I really enjoyed this movie. I think, again, Austin Butler, I really hope he brings home some hardware this award season because he deserves it.
Yeah, great, very well said summary there of Elvis. I also really liked that movie. I saw it. I remember seeing it in Dolby with my family, like opening weekend, and everyone really liked it, from my parents to my siblings and my girlfriend. So definitely one of those movies. I can see why it did so well at the box office. I can see why it's probably going to do well this season with awards voters, and I'm excited that it has done well, because it's something different. It's a more expensive movie. It's not necessarily $100 million movie, but it's more expensive, and it's just very, Baz Luhrmann's going to do his own thing stylistically. And I think that the fact that people engage and that resonates with them, I think is exciting, because it's not a cookie cutter, as you mentioned, kind of just go in, turn your brain off and like see everything. It's just, there is a lot going on there, especially under the surface. So Austin Butler, I think he's been kind of the revelation of the entire year, I would say. Like, I think that we talked about during House of the Dragon, we did buy and sell, kind of stock up and down. I think and no one's stock has increased more in the last 12 months than Austin Butler. Elvis came out, huge hit at the box office. He's been on SNL hosting. He's going to get all these awards and nominations. He's already filmed 2 movies this year. He did Dune, which is going to be a huge hit this year. And then he also has a smaller indie film coming out with Jeff Nichols. So yeah, it's been huge. And I think that his performance still stands out as one of my favorites of the entire year. So Elvis is a much deserved kind of shout out there.
Agreed. Number 8. What you got, Johnny?
I think my number 8 for this is going to be All Quiet on the Western Front. Again, I think this is one that you have yet to see.
This is of my 4 that I mentioned. This is number 2.
This is number 2. There's going to be at least one more, I believe. And actually, there may be a couple more. But yeah, this is just a brutal, terrifying look at war. Especially what I appreciate the most about this, maybe more than anything else, is that it's World War I. Obviously, it's a very famous novel based in World War I, and there was an original film that was in the Best Picture. I'm not sure if it won or it was nominated. I think it might have won back in the 20s, I think. And so it's kind of a bold choice to go and tackle that again, but I think it's very much worth it. Netflix, again, involved. You can go check it out on there. I certainly recommend doing so. it's technically astonishing. Effects are seamless. The action is very well shot, very impressive, very immersive. The sound is some of the best of the entire year. Same with the cinematography. But also, I think what is overlooked and what I tried to put in on my ballot for voting is Felix Kammerer, who is the lead soldier in the film. He is exceptional. I made this comparison a little bit online, but like 1917, of course, had a bunch of awards buzz, was the best picture, best director conversation. Um, and George McKay also came out of that movie getting some recognition, some awards. I think Felix Kammerer's performance in this is just as, if not more impressive than what McKay did in that movie. And I think what Berger did as the director and just the movie overall is more impressive than even 1917. 1917, to me, I like that movie. I appreciate it. It's technically amazing and everything, but it's a very specific type of like a hero kind of story and like trying to like rescue and like it's almost like a Saving Private Ryan situation. It's just very Hollywood, like very kind of like shiny and this movie looks like hell. Like it looks so terrible and disgusting, and you can smell it, you can feel it. It's scary, but there's also like this kind of beauty to it in all that like horrific, like terrible warfare. And so I think that this movie, if you liked 1917, or if you like war films, or if you want to see more of that, then you should absolutely check it out and watch it. It's in German language, so definitely watch it in that. Don't do the dubbing or whatever. I would recommend that over anything else. But yeah, definitely a highlight, I would say. And I just wish I could have seen it in theaters. I didn't get the opportunity to do that. I think it was in theaters to some extent, certainly not a wide release, but I had to make do at home. But it was still very impactful even then.
So number 8 for me, very different genre vibe from All Quiet on the Western Front, but also a Netflix movie, Glass Onion. You mentioned it off the top that you had finally gotten to check it out. I've seen it twice. Saw it at Film Fest 919 as the closing night film. Was very fun to see that in a theatrical experience, and then saw it again in theaters at Thanksgiving when it had its limited run. Saw that with my family, so that was cool to watch it for the second time as they're kind of putting the pieces together, but myself getting to break down and identify hints and stuff early on. So I am obviously a much bigger fan of this movie and the first movie than you are. The first movie was one of my favorites of 2019, so I was very excited for this. And I thought for the most part, like Daniel Craig himself, fantastic, slipped back into the character of Benoit Blanc excellently. I loved the change of scenery, moving this into a completely new, rather than being, it's still like, a group of people self-contained, like in this one location, but rather than like the family estate having this new like Grecian Mediterranean vacation spot. And I thought the ensemble was really talented as well. I still prefer the first movie overall, prefer the first cast overall. But I thought this was a solid follow-up there. When I rewatched it the second time, I thought that the flashback sequence that we get sort of in that second and at the end of like the second act, I guess, or most of the second act, I thought that went on a little longer than felt the first time. So, but I still think that this is a very fun movie. Really, like, it's kind of interesting because I know I've seen a lot of stuff online about like the reasons why people didn't like it, of being like rather than the first movie where it's like, oh, if you watch it and you like put the pieces together as you go, rather than like pieces are missing here until that second act, third act, which like I understand, but I was still able to have plenty of fun with this, had a good time watching it, and didn't have that affect me too much. I don't know if any of that was like what made it lesser in your opinion, or if it was other things, but I really enjoyed this. 8 on my list, 8 on the top 10. So respect to Glass Onion. I'm excited for whatever the third inevitable Knives Out mystery is. I know Ryan Johnson was upset that it was Glass Onion and Knives Out mystery. And I saw tweets that were like, make the next one, whatever the title is, a Glass Onion mystery, and just keep spinning it off like this. But I'm excited. I need more Benoit Blanc. So hopefully, I've seen a lot of stuff of like dream casting, who you want, like what stars, and I haven't seen a bad one yet. I feel like anytime a name comes up, I'm like, oh yeah, they'd be good. Oh yeah, let's do them. So I think there's a lot of potential here.
Yeah, I'll probably leave it at that for Glass Onion. But I'm glad you liked it. I'm sure the third one, I feel like that this movie, based on what they've released and said so far, like hasn't done like amazing numbers on Netflix, which is kind of intriguing to me.
Yeah, you would think on a Christmas release, only thing to watch kind of vibe,
All these
that it
actors
would. I think it was like the fifth or sixth best Netflix
ever or
release,
something. Yeah.
which was not fantastic, like you said, but
Yeah, it wasn't even number one for last year as far as movies. So
it's I'm curious, like you said, what was it? I can't remember what I was gonna say at this point. I don't know. Forget about me.
was it for
Move on.
part three maybe? But well I'll just kind of piggyback off that and say, well, we were talking about that. For my next one, I'll also talk about a Netflix movie that you didn't feel great about, to put it mildly, and that is Noah Baumbach's
No.
White Noise. And so I'm not going to go into too much detail about this because we did speak on it previously. It's just a very, again, I mentioned with Babylon, this is a movie unlike anything else you'll really watch this year, as far as the tone, the style, visually, with the dialogue, the performances. It's 100% up my alley. It's very absurdist. It's very kind of surreal, and also it has like the way the dialogue and the actors perform. It reminds me of almost like a Lanthimos film in some respects. Even Driver's performance, I would compare it to like something like Colin Farrell and like The Lobster or something. And I think that it has a very specific, as far as its setting, also, I think the 80s and the small town, like a college town, and just the way the whole the ensemble with all these different characters. Adam Driver, I think, is amazing. Greta Gerwig, Don Cheadle as well. The way that they all kind of shift throughout the film, their relationships and everything, I just found really interesting. So it's on Netflix now. You should absolutely watch it. You may or may not like it as much as I did, obviously, but for me, it also reminds me, I've compared it to Lanthimos. I think the Coen brothers is something else that I also kind of like draw a comparison to, because the way I felt, like just like the crazy like misadventures and like the little like situations they found themselves in, kind of reminded me of like how the Coen brother characters, especially the protagonists, get into all these like wild situations. And then also like just the way I felt at the end, like I wish I could have like stuck with the characters even longer and like done and like seen what happens next. And so I feel like that it's almost like a comfort, like in that regard. Like I think this is a movie I'll probably come back to, maybe once a year or something, just like to get that very specific hit of like cinematic energy. But yeah, it's different. It's different. But if you're interested, I would certainly give it a shot. And let me know what you think about it as well, because I feel like it's very divisive as far as how people feel about it.
I will say I was the only one of our group that was not all about this movie. So it was very redeeming for me to see White Noise trending on Twitter today when I woke up, and go in and look at tweets of people being like, what the hell did I just watch? Like, what is this? Which is very much my experience. And so I was like, yes, I'm validated. I'm not alone. It is not just me that did not get this. So I'm glad that you enjoyed it, that it worked really well for you. It did not for me, and I'm glad that I'm not alone there. My number 7 here, another one that we talked about, another one from Film Fest 919. She Said, the New York Times journalism movie about the women who wrote the investigative piece that started the Me Too movement, brought down Harvey Weinstein. You've got Zoe Kazan and Carey Mulligan in the leading roles here. 2 really strong performances from both of them. I'm a sucker for a journalism movie as someone who went to journalism school. I love Spotlight. That was one of my favorite movies for a very long time. And this had that same sort of like the same, you're on the beat, you're looking for the story, you've got it, you're chasing it down, you've got a setback. You like didn't revolutionize the formula of like journalism movies, but I thought it did it really well and did it with some really strong performances. So that was enough for me to be very pleased by She Said. Really enjoyed it. Number 7 out of 10 on my list.
Yeah, that is one I have not yet seen. But I've heard, yeah, I mean, I've heard pretty good things about it, and you more than maybe anyone else. So, definitely got to look at that. For me, coming up on my next pick, this is one you haven't seen either, I believe, and that is going to be After Sun, which is the directorial debut, probably the most highlighted and acclaimed directorial debut of the entire year. Charlotte Wells, Paul Mescal as the lead, and he has been kind of getting higher profile, I feel like, in the last couple of years. And Frankie Corio is the girl in the movie. She plays his daughter. I threw this movie on late one night. I got a screener for it from A24, thankfully. I was able to check it out after much buzz. It had come out, I believe it premiered at Cannes, which was, months and months prior to when I got to see it. Had heard a lot of good things about it, had heard it was pretty emotional. And then when the movie ended at like midnight and it was like a work night and I had to go to bed and like focus and get up the next morning, I was just like, God, this movie just totally destroyed me and like mentally, like just completely shifted like how I felt. And so I was like, my mind was just like spinning when I was trying to go to bed. That's really probably the highest compliment I can give it. It's just a very intimate, very creatively framed and shot and written film, and the editing I think is some of the years like most inspired as well. I mean, I would really put it up there with, everyone's talking about like Everything Everywhere All at Once or Top Gun for editing, and Avatar and these other movies. I would even say After Sun, completely different type of movie, but it's definitely doing something interesting. I mentioned Decision to Leave earlier. And then also Paul Mescal and Frankie Corio, two of the best performances of the entire year. Absolutely. Frankie Corio is one performer that I think will be really interesting to watch. Still very young, I believe, maybe 15 or 16. And then Paul Mescal, like I think is again one of the rising like young like actors, and I'm excited to see what he's going to be doing next, because I thought he should be getting an Oscar nomination. I don't think that's going to happen, unfortunately, but I hope he gets some due recognition this award season, because the whole movie a lot of it rides on him and his dynamic with her. And it's just it all hits at the end. So, and that's a lot of it's part of the performance. But Charlotte Wells is the director, of course, writing and directing. That's someone else who I'm really excited to watch as far as what the follow-up's going to be in her kind of next few years of her career.
This is, in fact, one I have not seen, but it is one of those first of 2023. You already talked about All Quiet on the Western Front. That's one of those. After Sun. What else? I know there's one more that's coming on your list. What was the other one? I think it was like 10 or 9 that you had.
Decision to Leave.
Decision to Leave. Yep. That's, I've got my work cut out for me to kick off this year to catch up on some of these ones. But yeah, After Sun definitely on that list. Number 6 for me, this was a rare movie that we did not really talk about, which is shocking. But because it came out while I was away on my honeymoon, and then came back and just kept things moving. But Nope, Jordan Peele's third movie, the latest in his horror collection after Get Out and Us. Really enjoyed this movie. I still have yet to give it a rewatch. I need to, just because I feel like it'll even further enhance my appreciation of it. But it was one that really, like, I think what I liked most about this was the fact that like I had to sit and think with it for a long time, like I saw the movie, I left, and I like kept thinking about it and like working stuff out of my head, and like read a couple articles, a couple like not explainer pieces, but like just people like putting pieces together. It wasn't like I left it in the sense of like a white noise and was like, what the fuck was that? Like, what do I need to like, what didn't I it was like, oh, there was so much at play here, like let me process this. And I thought that it was the most like elevated of what we've seen from him so far. Like the horror aspects of it, like there were some moments that were like, oh my god, are we gonna get a jump scare, or like what's going on? But then a lot of it was like very just like overarching eeriness of the movie. But I thought it was like a beautifully shot movie as well. It's great performances from Daniel Kaluuya as always, but Keke Palmer as well. Really just standing out and taking charge here. But I this is one that I wish we could have had a full episode on. But I had to at least shout it out here so that we could get some note mention on the podcast.
Yeah, that's a good shout out. That is a movie I definitely need to revisit. I only saw it the one time, opening night in IMAX. I really liked it. It was kind of different in a lot of ways than maybe what my expectations were, but I still liked it. I definitely liked it more than Us. Don't think I would necessarily put it on the same level as Get Out. But I
Agreed.
did quite like it. So definitely worthwhile there, and I will want to check that out again soon. My top five, I would say this is tough again. And these could be shifted around. I'd say, one direction either way, honestly. But The Fabelmans, Steven Spielberg. I wasn't sure what to think about going into this movie. I knew it would be basically autobiographical of Spielberg, kind of recounting his childhood and like his early years as a kid filmmaker, basically in high school and even before that. And I went to this movie and I watched it. It's a longer movie. I think it's like 2.5 hours. It's a small family drama. Michelle Williams and Paul Dano play his parents. They're both great. But really, Gabriel Labelle, I think, was so impressive as Steven Spielberg's stand-in character. Sam Fabelman is his name. And I thought that his performance was so he was so likable, I think, is like the main thing. And just also all the emotional beats between him and his parents and the parents between each other. The fun kind of almost like winking at the camera Spielberg things that like, kind of throwing back to things that we've seen in his other movies, but also alluding to the fact that he's going to become this great, like legendary artist. I think that it's just hits all the right spots again, as far as like a movie fan and someone who's just been such a huge Spielberg, admirer, for so many years, basically my entire life. And it also ends with one of the best scenes of the entire year, which people have probably spoiled plenty on Twitter. But if you haven't had it spoiled yet, I'm not going to spoil it here. But it didn't. I don't think a lot of people have seen the movie necessarily, like in full. It's on video on demand, I think, right now. So if you can check it out, certainly recommend it. It's going to be right there in the best picture conversation, probably the whole season. And I think it's really one of my favorite Spielberg movies, certainly of the last 10, 20 years. So that would also be some of the higher praise I could lay on it. But I'm looking forward to rewatching it. I've only seen it the one time in theaters. I have a screener, and I would definitely want to check it back out or show it to maybe some of my family members or something. So Zach, I'm pretty sure that's one that you have not seen yet. Am I wrong?
I have seen it.
Okay, gotcha.
I saw this in theaters. There was like a screening for it for up in Raleigh. But yeah, I saw this. I liked it quite a bit. I think it's probably in like let's see. It is number 12 on my list. So just missed the top 10. Liked it quite a bit. I agree with you completely on Gabriel Labelle. Thought he was a great like kind of breakout performance for him. But yeah, I enjoyed it quite a bit. I don't have necessarily like I've seen Steven Spielberg movies, but I don't have like the filmmaking affinity for him that like a you or a Josh or Jake might have in the same sense, but I still really enjoyed it. Number 5 on my list, Everything Everywhere All at Once. One of the most surprising and enjoyable movies of the year. Just an absolute bonkers all over the place movie as well, though, but in the best way possible. Really impressed by this. Didn't have any sort of, other than knowing it was like a multiverse movie, that's the extent of my knowledge going into the movie. And so that was an absolute blast to kind of just have my mind blown as things keep taking left turns and keep twisting throughout as everything unfolds. But really, really strong performances across the board. I voted in multiple acting categories here. But no, I thought it was so fun. Such a surprising twist, way better than, some other multiverse movies that we may have gotten this year in the MCU. But I'm all about Waymond. Waymond Hive, rise up. That's my king. I'm so happy with him. And I'm so glad that I have this now on 4K and that like stuff. I searched so hard at the beginning when I had first seen it in theaters for the monologue that he has about like, in another life, I would have like, I would have loved to just do laundry and taxes with you. And like, you fight like this is how I fight. Like that monologue is so great. Great movie. Everything Everywhere All at Once. Number 5 on my top 10.
Yeah, that's a movie. I mean, definitely one of the highlight movies of the year. Definitely up there for me as well. Probably right around my number 10 spot, right on the periphery. So yeah, Everything Everywhere All at Once, that I would certainly hold up there as one of the more memorable movies of the year, if nothing else. But just like entertaining, emotional, great action, yeah, great performances, the whole ensemble. Of course, hopefully we'll get their flowers this award season. It wasn't quite as high for me, but one movie that I think is a movie that just hits all the right spots for being entertaining, having like the right emotional impacts, the stakes, the tension, entertainment, like as far as spectacle, but also even just the script, the dialogue, the characters back and forth. Top Gun Maverick, maybe the movie of the year in most ways, if not all of them. Unbelievable box office performance, unlike anything we've really seen. And just a good old fashioned like Hollywood blockbuster. It is a sequel. It's almost like a legacy kind of sequel, almost like a reboot situation, but it's telling a legitimately good story. It has a good follow through from the original. Tom Cruise returns. Joseph Kosinski directing. Christopher McQuarrie, who he's worked with on Tom Cruise has worked with on the Mission Impossible movies. He was heavily involved with the script and also producing. And I just think what they did with the cast, Miles Teller, of course, and Glenn Powell being the real big standouts, Val Kilmer being able to return in some capacity. Jennifer Connelly is like the love interest, Penny. I just thought it all was it was just a well-oiled machinery of like cinema and like blockbuster filmmaking. It's just one of those great movies that we get maybe once or twice a year as far as like quality. But the fact that it had the quality and also people responded to it so strongly and it just took off and it's going to be a Best Picture nominee. I mean, who would have thought that? I mean, come on. I think it's just such a cool story and the movie is so irresistible. It's not hard to see why it did what it has. And I just it's proper timing. I bumped it up a few spots, I think, because last night I rewatched it on my 4K disc that I just got on my new TV, and oh man, it's just stunning in like every regard and just such a good time. I showed it to my sister and her husband, and they had not seen it yet. And I mean, they were just blown away. And I think that it was a little infectious as far as my feelings about it. So I did bump it up. And Zach, I know that you were also obviously a huge fan of that movie as well. Like pretty much everyone was. I don't think I've seen anyone say that they didn't like this movie.
Yeah, this is on my list much further down. This is number 2 for me. So I saw it in theaters on the biggest screen, IMAX, and absolutely loved it. Was blown away, like everything you just said, and then rewatched it on 4K the other night, and showed it to Rebecca for the first time, who did not see it over the summer. And she was like, similar to what you were saying about your family, she was all about it, fully invested, not necessarily like an action movie diehard fan or something like that, a Tom Cruise, the Tom Cruise stan like we are. But she loved it, so it was really cool to see that and to just like cement it as being such a fantastic movie. My top 3 that we're about to get into here in a minute really are like the wind could blow and I could readjust them. I know you've been saying a lot of your rankings are, could fluctuate a little bit. I feel very confident about my top 25, very confident about my top 10, but these top 3 are just like all so good that I really struggled I rewatched all of them, and am struggling to just like pick one. So I just kind of like went with my gut, stuck with it. But again, top 3 could be completely interchangeable. But before we get into the top 3, my top 4, number 4, which is again, not to say it wasn't a great movie, just because it was outside of the top three. But Cha Cha Real Smooth came in at number 4 for me, an Apple original. What a heartwarming, touching, realistic, happy, sad movie. It's very much up my alley. Like you were saying, white noise for you. That's what Cha Cha Real Smooth is for me, in that it's this like light rom-com that feels very authentic to, trying to figure out life in your 20s and like the post-college of like just not knowing what direction to go, all of this. And it was a simple, but just again, so happy and sad at the same time, to quote Casey Musgraves. But I love this movie so much. It was so good, so pure, so wholesome. Dakota Johnson's great in it. Cooper Raiff, writer, director, star, really did it all here. I know he's done a couple other smaller films, so I'd want to check those out to see if it's a Cooper Raiff thing or if I just love this particular movie. But if you haven't checked it out yet, it's on Apple TV Plus. Go ahead, check it out. You won't be disappointed. Johnny, did you watch this or no?
I did. I watched it. It came out earlier in the year.
Yeah, it was at Sundance, I believe, and then
yeah.
went to Apple.
Yeah, I liked it. I liked it a lot. I thought it was pretty great. Just a really good feel good movie with really solid performances from pretty much everyone. And yeah, it was a very also like it's like kind of a coming of age for like college grads.
I love coming of age movies. I'm a sucker for them.
Yeah, so I liked it. I liked it a lot.
All right. That's 4. Top 3, right, Johnny? What's your third?
My number 3 is going to be Avatar: The Way of Water.
Me too.
So we'll be discussing this together real quick. We did our full-blown review, so we won't belabor the point too much, but we were both tremendous fans of this movie. I was already a huge fan of the first one, but I think this pretty much hits all the same marks for me, and then some in a lot of departments. The effects, especially the underwater effects, are sensational. I think the whole cast with all the new characters do a great job, as well as the returning casts. Sam Worthington, I think, is even better than the first film. Same with Stephen Lang. It just really, and also the introduction of so many different new like environments and creatures and like Na'vi. Like I think it was just a really great way to step it up and like expand upon Pandora as a world and the Na'vi as like a people, and also the action. I mean, just the action was unbelievable. Some of the best of the entire year, if not the best, and leaves it in a great place going into part 3. Like I was already excited for this movie, but I think I'm even more excited for part 3 than I was for part 2, which is saying something.
Retweet. This movie, like you said, we did the full episode on it an episode ago, so go check that out if you want more in-depth breakdowns. But yeah, was a fan of the first movie, kind of forgot about it, saw the re-release, loved it, and like you said, this just really built on that, expanded on it, got better in every way possible. I think that anyone who has that criticism of the first movie being, all flash but no substance, go see this movie. You will be blown away by not only the flash of it, but also the heart, the storytelling, the narratives, the characters, the relationships, all of those things that the first one may not be at 100% in. It's fantastic across the board here, from a spectacle level to a narrative level as well. So again, Avatar it's number 3 for me on my list. It could be number 2, it could be number 1, but yeah, number 3 right now. And my number 2, as we said already, was Top Gun Maverick. So Johnny, I'll turn it over to you for your number 2.
My number 2, again, this is really could be swapped either way. I'm going to stick with my number 2 as probably my favorite movie of the year, and that would be The Batman. Just again, we've talked about a couple of blockbusters at this point: Avatar, Top Gun. This would be right up there. I'm a huge Batman fan. I'm a huge Matt Reeves fan, a Robert Pattinson fan, Greg Fraser fan. This movie just, again, it was something that all the right pieces came together. We've talked about it extensively, full review and everything. If you want to check that out, I wrote a review for the website as well. It just really is. It's a top tier for me. Comic book movie, superhero movie, Batman movie. It's a great like mystery, like murder, like thriller kind of serial killer movie. And as a 3 hour movie, I think also Avatar was about the same length. It just really, the pacing I think works really well. The mystery unravels like appropriately. I think the Riddler as the villain I think is really great as well. And then the Penguin, of course, also being involved, in Catwoman. Again, a Batman fan, I think all those elements came together, and it's basically a reboot. We've talked about reboots and legacy sequels and all these other things. Basically a reboot of Batman. And I think that it's such a perfect foundation. And for me, it's a better foundation, or it's just very comparable to what Christopher Nolan did with Batman Begins, even because Batman Begins is perfect in that it tells us the whole origin story, shows us his training, his parents, and everything. Here we are able to jump ahead, of course, and we don't need to see all that extra information, but it still does kind of his early couple of years of him getting started as Batman, and how he's going to evolve, and how that's going to occur over the next 1, 2, 3, who knows how many movies and projects. I'm just really, really excited to see what that has to offer. This was my most anticipated comic book movie for the last few years, basically, since it was announced. And I think the sequel will be pretty much the same until it comes out.
Well, Johnny, number one on my list is the Batman, so I'll go ahead and discuss this as well. Yeah, I mean, it came out all the way back in the spring, has stood the test of time over the rest of the year. Rewatched it a couple times, still loved it. As I said earlier when we were talking about Blackbird, I'm all about some serial killers, some crime, some murder mystery, all of that, and that is exactly what this movie is. It's basically like a David Fincher-esque crime thriller set in the world of Batman.
Yeah.
rather than it being a superhero movie that does this, it is the opposite. It is a crime thriller murder mystery that happens to have Batman, Catwoman, Penguin, all of these people in it that we know from comic books. It incorporates the two super well, making this, very much Batman, the world's greatest detective. Robert Pattinson is great. I know we've talked about it a lot, that this is like the definitive version of Batman that we're gonna get. Love the Christopher Nolan movies, love the Dark Knight, still maybe as like I would still maybe like prefer that as just like an overall movie, but this is like being what the epitome of Batman is, being the definitive Gotham City, like all of those things. Like if you're looking for like true Batman, that's what this is. And it very much lived up to all of the expectations, all of the hype. Thankfully, we didn't have to wait long into the year to get it. And like I said, it was able to hold down that top spot for the whole year for me. And I'm, like you were saying, thrilled for what comes next in this world, from the HBO Max series to Batman 2 to, getting some sort of edition of the Joker. We'll see what happens, but love this movie, love this year of movies, had a ton of great stuff. Johnny, I'm turning it back to you for your number one, which yes is on my list of priority watches for 2023.
Yeah, so the Batman, I'm glad we were in very strong agreement there. It held the top crown for virtually the entire year, wire to wire almost. And for me, it's still my favorite. I saw it like 6 times in theaters. I've seen it maybe 7 or 8 times total. But what came in later in the year, I saw it in theaters in an empty theater by myself, and that I have already got the 4K. I've watched the test, the screener that we got from the folks for rewards. And I think this might be like the best movie of the 2020s so far, like of the last couple of years. And that's going to be Tar from Todd Field, starring Cate Blanchett. I've raved about this on Twitter a decent amount. People have raved on my behalf since it premiered at Venice back in September. I think it's an epic. It's close to 3. It's like 2 hours, 40 something minutes. It's just an epic but intimate like examination, character study, and it tackles so many different like hot button issues and like topics, and does it with such like Glass Onion and like Ryan Johnson, what he does with his movies. Like again, it's like a totally different style of what he's trying to do, obviously. But like those movies irk me so much because I feel like he's not saying anything like interesting or like that's insightful, and or he's not like adding some other like perspective to it, or he's just trying to tell us like what he thinks or like how to feel. Whereas like with this movie, when it comes to like, you want to talk about cancel culture, you want to talk about people in power, very like influential or like iconic, like folks in different industries, things like that, and how they can control people or manipulate people or do bad things, but also maybe have redeeming qualities and things like that. Like, this is the perfect examination. And he doesn't do it where it's like Todd Field, who I think has the screenplay of the year and maybe the best directing job of the year potentially. You know, he just puts it on a platter and he gives you a very murky, ugly, but interesting and like mesmerizing portrait of Lydia Tarr, which is Cate Blanchett's character. And Cate Blanchett gives like the performance of a lifetime in this movie and is like a Daniel Plainview like level protagonist, I think. There Will Be Blood is one of my favorite movies, and I think this movie has some flavors of like a Paul Thomas Anderson, like a Stanley Kubrick like style, in a very different way. And it's just, I've been thinking about it, I feel like constantly since I saw it, and I really can't recommend it enough. And again, another one of those movies that has a smaller drama, like a smaller like art film, hasn't really gotten like the audience it deserves. So, you know, if you can, you know, watch it on demand, buy it, rent it, whatever, I would absolutely recommend it, because it's going to be in the awards conversation for the next few months. Most likely a Best Picture, you know, contender, or at least nominee. Cate Blanchett in the conversation to win. It's just top to bottom. It's just one of those movies that I think works in every possible way and is done so with an original script, an original concept, and an original character. And I think there's certainly something to be said for that as well. So give it a shot, and that includes you, Mr. Goins.
I will, I promise. What a year 2022 was. So many great movies, and we're, like you said from the very start of this episode, we're primed for a big year of 2023 movies. Can't wait to get started with it. Thank you all for tuning in all year long over the past year. Thank you for sticking with us, and we look forward to bringing you all the latest in movies, TV, pop culture, entertainment, all of that throughout 2023.
Absolutely. It's going to be a good one, folks, for television and film. Stick around and stay tuned, and do that by following on Twitter, Instagram, like us on Facebook, and you can subscribe to our YouTube channel where we post all the episodes and additional videos, interviews, reviews there for you. And you can find all those accounts at Inside Film Room.
And while you're at it, be sure to like, rate, review, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We're on Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, Google, Amazon, iHeartRadio, YouTube, anywhere you can find a podcast, we are there. And come back next week, where we will be looking ahead this time for our most anticipated movies of 2023. We'll see you then.